Is Marvel's The Eternals actually really that bad, or is Rotten Tomatoes and the critics capping real hard right now?
I'm gonna smash your boy, guys.
I'm Naruto Grandma.
Y'all must have forgot. Gotta be very careful.
海賊王になるのは俺だ!
Hey y'all, welcome to Never Bored with George. I'm your host George, and today I'll be giving you my non-spoiler review for Marvel's The Eternals. Guys, this movie, from the get-go, from its announcement up until opening day, has been getting the most insane hype, whether it's good or if it's bad. Let's take a dive in. The movie itself actually feels really different from the typical MCU movie. Marvel took a huge risk by hiring a director that isn't your typical, let me just take the driver's seat side and just, cruise through with the production. No, we got an involved director, an involved cast. And also they took a huge risk by making a movie about the Eternals, which most MCU fans, even comic book fans, don't really know the depth of the Eternals in the MCU. Guys, we're in deep cuts territory right now. This movie from the get-go feels different. So the movie kind of starts off with this kind of biblical approach, right? It almost feels like I'm reading the first chapter of Genesis. Basically, they explain that the Celestials are God, and they created the Eternals to protect the earth and humans from the Deviants, which are these creatures that essentially go out of their way to harm and hurt and destroy humanity. Now let's get to the Eternals. Cersei, the transmuter, who can basically touch an object and change its properties and change it completely. Then we have Icarus, who is the loyal soldier, super flight, super strength, and can also shoot lasers out of his eyes. Then we have Kingo, who shoots energy from his hands like a gun. Then we have Ajax, who is a healer. Then we have Sprite, who casts these crazy illusions. So cool to see her in action, guys. A lot of cool stuff she does in the movie. Then we have Phastos, who's basically the technopath and can create constructs with his energy, basically creating cool inventions, tools, and ideas that can help him fight the deviants and any other threats that come their way. It's super cool seeing him in action because it kind of reminds you of Tony Stark when he's messing around with creating stuff with Jarvis and the holograms, but Phastos can actually create stuff. Then there's Gilgamesh, who's basically the brunt brawler of the group. He can fight. His energy allows him to create armor around him. It's so cool to see him armor up in the movie. Then we have Athena. Ooh, Angelina Jolie. What's cool about her abilities is that she can create weapons from her energy. A lot of cool, crazy weapon constructs. Mid-weapon can change her weapon to a different weapon. Mid-fight, it's super cool and badass. Then we have Mikari, who's basically the speedster of the group. She can use her energy to run at super speeds. It's really cool to see how she uses her abilities and how she fights with it, because she's not just running like to protect like some speedsters do and across different combo cannons. It's just really cool how they implement her speed in the movie. Then we have Druid. So cool, actually. One of the characters that they didn't really advertise in the movie, but I really like in this movie as well. Druid basically uses his energy as an Eternal to manipulate the minds and be a telepath essentially and control people. I think it's the same thing. And a couple of worthy characters to know. There's Karun, who is the valet and assistant to Kingo. Super cool. He has that Indian chill dad vibe going on. Really like it. Super cool character. And funny. Dan Whitman, who is the boyfriend of Cersei. And if you know who Dan Whitman is in the comics, you know there's a lot of cool stuff coming his way for him, but I'm not gonna say any more, that's spoilers. So what I really like about this movie is that since it has a lot of characters in the movie, it does a great job of, balancing each character's screen time, giving them enough character development, but also when they're together, it's great to see them together as well too. When the Eternals are on screen, each and every one of them, I don't feel bored by it because each character has something they do really well, a piece of dialogue they added, or a different perspective of what they have for their purpose for in the story. So super cool to see each of them do their own thing. It also does a great job of explaining what each character does by showing that in action, whether it's a fight scene or a situation where they need to use their powers. It's super cool to see them in action and to see what they can do and how they use their powers differently based on their personalities. But what's great about it is in the action scene, we get to see each of their characters use their powers in different ways to the fullest. When they're fighting the Deviants, it's super cool to see, Kingo shooting, Icarus flying. Yeah, that's great. And, most of the five Eternals will be the ones more combat based. But I also like to see the other five Eternals, Ajax, Phastos, Druid. They all aren't have, battle powers, but they have cool uses of their powers, that help assist humanity as well as the other Eternals when they fight against the deviants. Super cool to see each character utilizing those skill set for different things, and also how it exemplifies their character. Super cool. The deviants are super cool to see on screen as well. When they fight against the Eternals, it's actually really crazy because they kind of remind you of like ancient mythological creatures. They look like, creatures that are from Earth, but since they're crazy looking like the deviants they get to mesh in they get to look different and look cool, and it kind of makes them look like they're creatures from our mythology. Like I mentioned before, this movie takes place over a large period of time. We're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's very cool to see how the Eternals have interacted in these crazy points in history, a lot of crazy periods of time that they explore and show how they were involved in it. It brings a sense of realism in history because as an audience member, I like connecting and seeing those what if scenarios of like, oh, it's cool to see Athena's reference as the Athena, the god of war. We get to see, what Gilgamesh came from, how Icarus basically, fly too close to the sun, how he's based off that. It's super cool, and I like it when the MCU does this because I think the last time we had a more meaningful integration of history into the MCU was, the Captain America movies, how Hydra has influenced various events through history. It was really cool to see those moments put on screen and see how the Eternals have influenced humanity and history as a whole. There's also a lot of crazy concepts that the movie introduced. Don't want to go into too much because it'd be kind of spoilers, but we have things like, is non-action or not interfering for the greater good better than actually going out and try to make a difference despite the consequences? Another crazy idea is the idea of advancing humanity with technology, but also accepting the consequences of giving a species that lie, cheat, steal, but also help with that same technology. My overall thoughts of this movie is that I really love this Marvel movie so much. It's this meta science fiction movie that has universal stakes and scales to it. This movie feels so different and so special in the MCU. I mean, it has all the things that most MCU fans would love, the bits of humor, but with the scale and story they're trying to tell, it is refreshing to see what they did for this movie. These types of stories are the stories that get me excited to come back into the theater and watch this in the biggest screen possible, because you get to see the potential, what it has for future stories, but it also emphasizes the characters, their development, and their impact in the MCU and in the world as a whole. Such a great movie that exemplifies these things I've been mentioning. It's a risky movie to make, but I think the risk pays off because it puts the MCU in a new light that we've never seen before, and that just gets me excited to see what it has in store next. We need more movies that move the needle like this for comic movies as a whole. A lot of them feel kind of the same nowadays with the very few exceptions we get. Marvel should be making more movies like this for the future. The ones that take risks, that push a story, that bring in these characters that no one's ever heard about, putting them in the forefront, adopting it in a new way that's relevant, but also has a lot of depth and meaning for the MCU as a whole. I do recommend this movie if you are an MCU fan, and as someone who isn't connected to comic books, the MCU as a whole. The movie does have a couple of references sprinkled in from the MCU, but overall it's its own story, it's its own thing in the MCU. If anything, it's probably it's more like a prequel and a sequel to the MCU as a whole, with where the amount of history and content they cover in this movie. Solid movie as a whole. Also, if you're really so concerned about the freshness or the score, the reviews of this movie, let me just give you fresh advice for this movie.
Get the fuck out of here.
And go see it for yourself, because honestly, once I saw that the critics score, the critics are the biggest simps for Disney, the MCU. We know there's a lot of not so good MCU movies that have had a higher score than necessary, and this movie, I think, based on its scores and reviews, is definitely underrated. You should definitely go check out this movie and go see it in the biggest screen possible. I know the director filmed it in IMAX, so just like movies like Dune or The Dark Knight, it has those expanding aspect ratios, those big, tall, epic scenes, especially when you see the Celestials. You gotta go see it in the biggest screen possible. Do yourself a favor, go watch The Eternals. Guys, thank you guys for watching my non-spoiler review for the Marvel's The Eternals. There's more content on the way. If you love anime, we have a series everywhere with Naruto. Check that out on my channel. We also cover MMA. I just dropped a good prediction maybe good, maybe not prediction with my buddy Jason for UFC 268. Check that out as well. Guys, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, give it a like button. Subscribe if you want more content from me. Guys, if you've already seen the movie, comment below what your thoughts on the movie are. Obviously, be mindful, no spoilers in the comments, please, because other people haven't seen this movie yet. Drop what your thoughts on this movie are. If you haven't seen it yet, what are you excited about? What are you not so excited about? Drop a comment below. Love to have that discussion with you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a good one. Peace.